Folks, welcome. Bring it in, gather in. This is not your typical Super Gamer Boys format episode. Your host, captain, and dad, unfortunately, has fallen ill. I wish I would have came up with a bit before we did this. Oh well.
I think you were gonna say he passed away.
That would have been a good. No, I can't do that. The shock
I was
value,
like, whoa, whoa.
Look, I have to save that because I only get one time to use it, and then that's like a break the glass situation.
Yeah, that trick works one time.
Exactly. Welcome back to the Super Gamer Boys podcast, where we talk all things video games and news of what happened in the past week. I am your host today, King of Video Games, and also known as Pocket Poppy, Mr. Adrian Holmes.
King of Video Games.
Yes,
what an honor.
Yes, around here, I'm the better of us two at video games, so I take on that title until Garrett has earned it, and by beating me, which he has yet to do. And that beautiful voice that you're hearing is, of course, none other than Super NPC Radio's own Mr. Jeremy Smith. Thank you, good sir.
Oh, man.
For being
so
here, gracing us with your presence.
What a treat. Thank you.
If you don't know, Jeremy is the host of a multitude of shows over in the NPC Radio Network. You might know them. You might know him from a video games, a comedy show podcast, amongst a plethora of shows on their Patreon. Please go and check those out. And of course,
that's so nice.
Oh man, come on! This is the least I could do. You showed up. You know what I mean? But anyway, I'll get to the rest of the housekeeping stuff later. But today we're going to talk about the Game Awards nominees. A possible future where PlayStation comes out with their own handheld system, and a Final Fantasy VII Part 3 update. But first, let's give a quick update and shout out to our Patreon producers, Bumple Smash and Kajoma One, and our Super Gamer sponsors, Julie Bates, Mama Mare, Carrie, and David Matthews. If you want to be awesome,
David Matthews.
Isn't that nice? Like, you know what I mean?
It's like the respectable Dave Matthews.
I was gonna say, he has time to run a whole band, but he still subscribes to us. That's like our, sign that we're doing something here. We're making some change. We're making some waves. Dave Matthews is here. If you want to be awesome just like those folks, head over to patreon.com/supergamerboys, where you can get all our exclusive content, such as Super Later Boys, the podcast where we talk about anything not games, and episodes of our podcast, Super Gamer Book Club. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Also, I hope that they are up, or that Garrett will add it in the final cut of the podcast. But normally we have music selections from Jack Sriracha, Yate, or DJ Trooz in the background. We are running on Skeleton Crew energy today, so you may not hear them now, but in the final cut, they will definitely be there. Okay. Whew. Housekeeping is done.
Woo! You did it.
I did it. I did it. Thank you. Anyway, moving on to our mailbag section. Now, this is normally where our listeners and people who follow us would submit their questions during the week, and we would come here and read them. However, they have gone on a streak for the past couple of weeks of not really sending anything in. So I'm gonna have to give a couple of them a swirly to just kind of, let people know, I'm serious about these questions. But thankfully, we do have one faithful listener who does submit a question or an essay almost every week, and that is Ranger. He uses our website. You know how like most websites have a contact us, and you can put in a little blurb. Yeah, he goes in there and he does that every single week, and he has a whole thing. So I'm gonna read off his
Ranger. You're doing the Lord's duty,
the Lord's
buddy.
work, bro. You are holding out. You are the last bastion of mailbag, quite literally. But Ranger wrote in this week, and also his His letter goes as follows. It might have something for both of us, but I'll see if I can kind of twist it so that you can answer it too, Jeremy. Ranger heard that last week. He said, let's workshop your idea from last week. Ranger's weekly form entry. Both of you vocalized calling Ranger's weekly content segment. We were kind of, okay, so to give this some context, he writes in every week and we were trying to think of a name of the segment basically for him to write in. And we were just throwing stuff out: Ranger Ramble, Ranger Reflection, Romp with Ranger, etc. And we're just still workshopping that, and that's some of the things that he came up with.
Okay, so you haven't landed on one
yet. Not quite. So
Romp with Ranger?
That's a really good one. I think Ranger Ramble is good too.
Ranger Ramble's good. Ranger Reflection.
Not bad.
I would pitch on it just a little more, but you're almost there. You're circling it.
You know what I mean? We should have it probably by next week. We'll have it nailed down. But anyway, he says, let's jump into the questions of the week. He says, does it perplex anyone else that when we advance to this current generation, we weren't provided with more storage on the new consoles? I remember purchasing my Gears of War Xbox One S and it had 2 terabytes of storage. How crazy is it that that as we move forward, consoles did not include more hard disk storage than the previous generation, generally around 1 terabyte. I know we moved on to SSD, but I personally would have paid a little bit more for some initial additional storage out of the box. This is even more ludicrous to me considering how game sizes typically increase from generation to generation. I've been so frustrated, I ultimately installed a 4 terabyte SSD into my PS5. What did you pay, like $400 for that?
It's. I feel like that's like the average cost now per terabyte of SSD, right? It's about $100.
Around there, yeah.
You were talking about on my show about maybe looking at a Black Friday deal for a SSD and like trying to get something maybe in the half off range,
somewhere around there.
Great.
So yeah, he basically paid the cost of the console again to expand the storage. I mean, you know what? Yeah. If you keep that much content on your console at one time, I totally get it. You know, some people might take theirs with them places and, you know, might need the stuff downloaded to play offline. So I'm not judging. I'm just saying that's a hefty sum that I could not do.
And it's basically for convenience, right?
At this point, you can,
play things now as opposed to wait, which waiting sucks. I agree. So,
he says, let's see here. The 8 terabyte SSD was almost $1,000, he said. That's nuts.
Oof. I bet that has something to do with why we haven't seen more storage space on consoles.
That's what I was thinking too.
It's so expensive. Yeah.
His question is basically, do you boys ever feel the hard disk hardship from the current predetermined storage space available on consoles? On average, how many games do you keep in rotation at once? You want to go first, Jeremy?
This is a great question. I freaking love this question because I think about this more than I wish I did. Like, it takes up more of my brain than I wish it did, but like trying to juggle storage space on consoles because it's such a tricky thing. Do I ever feel the hard disk hardship? Yes, absolutely. I think it sucks. You know, I think that we don't have much more space than we used to have, and games are getting bigger. But also, I feel like, you know, it can prevent games sometimes from being even bigger and more beautiful because, you know, they would have to, you know, part of like when you're developing a game, you're trying to cut everything down to the smallest you possibly can so it can fit on these consoles. So how many average games on my Xbox Series X? I think the Series X has 1 terabyte of hard.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to do this on all my consoles. I keep like a large smattering of retro games. That's like things that are like under a gigabyte, right? So like, you know, my Xbox has copies of like Crimson Skies and, you know,
Blinks the Time Sweeper.
Hardcore. Yeah. Hardcore Uprising. Just a bunch of like fun Xbox and Xbox 360 games. And then I'll probably have like 4 big showstoppers on there. So like right now I have like Forza Horizon 5, Metaphor ReFantazio, the Dead Space remake, and like one other bigger game. And then the goal is you try to beat one of those games so you can uninstall it immediately from your console.
Free up that space.
But the way games come out though, I can't beat them as fast as they come out. So inevitably, I'm like waiting for a game to install. What about you?
So right now I only have my PS5 really, as far as like systems with SSD expandable storage. And I present myself as like a huge Sony mark, pretty much. So like, if somebody came over, like I could be like, "Oh wow, this is the PlayStation 5. Have you ever seen one of these? Have you ever seen the games that play on them?" So my rule, when I originally had my PS5, I had a terabyte. I had a 2 terabyte SSD installed into it. And then the way that I did it, the rule that I had was, if it's a PlayStation Studios game, like it's developed by a PlayStation Studio, it would stay on system storage, because that's the spec that it was developed with, and that's how you know for sure that it's gonna run and load and everything else exactly the way that it was intended by that developer, by Sony, because they developed to that spec. Like for Ratchet and Clank, they need those speeds to go through those dimensions and load correctly. I didn't want to chance it, even though the SSD, the external one, might be similar, speed. I just don't have to even have a doubt that it would work by staying on system storage.
Saying. That's smart. I feel like that's smart. I don't know if it's does work, but
it's just it's a nice thought, right?
But it feels smart,
right? So like so your Ratchet and Clanks, your Horizons, your Demon Souls, so on and so forth. Anything from a PlayStation Studio goes on there. Anything that is second party or higher goes on the external storage, because it's mostly it's built for everything, for every spec. So it doesn't matter what kind of drive it goes on, because I know or at least Sony claims that the SSD in the PS5 is custom. So, I try to stick to that standard. But yeah,
wow.
And then even then, I'll maybe keep 5 to 6 PlayStation Studios games on the console storage, and then on the SSD, I'll just put whatever. It's 2 terabytes. I you know what I mean? If something comes out that I want to play, I think I'm kind of like you in that regard, where I'll just have a whole bunch of like small indie games on there that I want to play from time to time. I don't really put anything too huge, but the option is there if I want it to be. But yeah, that's how I divvy up my drive in my own psychotic little way. I hope that answers your question, Ranger. He has a PS here. He says, I can't tell you how many times I almost bought Metal Slug Tactics this week. I'm close. Dude, listen to me. If I didn't buy Dragon Quest this week, I would have bought Metal Slug Tactics. But
good on you for buying Dragon Quest. I mean, that was the move.
That was the move. I'm barely a couple of hours into that game, and I'm already like, I can feel it. I can feel those hooks. I can feel them.
It's like, could you put this out as game of the year? Is it like, would it make someone's game of the year list?
Honestly,
like, is it even fair to?
Honestly, I mean, it came out this year, right? Like, so it's fair game.
Know.
And from what I'm seeing so far,
incredible.
Having, played the original and seeing the updates and the quality of life stuff, like most people playing this game, I feel like they're not old enough to remember the actual Dragon Quest 3 or have played the actual Dragon Quest 3, right? So this is a new experience for them. So they don't really get the full experience of like how good this game is, because you didn't play, even though the original 3 is really good. But just to see,
it's great.
It's a fantastic game. But just to see how much they've taken it and like touched every single little corner of that game is just, man, what an achievement. You know, hats off to that. I can't wait for 1 and 2 to come out now because this is already this good. You know, we're getting a treat with that trilogy.
Or give me 5.
It's coming.
Oh, I can't wait for them to do 5.
It's coming.
You know, 5 is gonna sing in that art style.
Yeah. So that is pretty much the mailbag for this week from Ranger. Ranger, we appreciate you writing in every week. Please continue to do so. You are carrying the section on your back, my guy. Now, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I guess I'm going to have to do double duty. But for this upcoming section, we call the Nerdy Nudes, which is basically the news story. The news stories of the week that we can talk about. Normally, Garrett would say it's time for the Nerdy Nudes, and then I'd do the little jingle. But I will go ahead and do both sides. So as of right now, we are moving into the Nerdy Nudes. And then I have to switch over here, and then I have to go, it's now time for the Nerdy Nudes. Okay. All right.
I'm so glad I know what time it is.
Yeah. You know, I have to keep people on track. So our first story comes from GameSpot, and it's basically us. We can probably just chat a little bit about it. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at a little list, but maybe we can go over a couple of the bigger categories. And that is that the Game Awards 2024 nominees have been announced. And I don't know if you've been online lately, but there has been a huge kerfuffle about the titles that have been nominated specifically for Game of the Year. Basically,
do you think the kerfuffle is bigger this year than it normally is?
I think so, only because of the kind of content that's been allowed to be nominated. I don't think we've had to have this discussion before because it's always been qualified as a certain kind of content versus a full game.
Right.
But we'll get to that in just a second because I'm sure this article is going to have its own opinion about it. Let's see here. So it says, the Game Awards, an annual celebration of video games, takes place this December, and the nominees have now been announced for the 2024 showcase. In 2023, Baldur's Gate 3 took home the highly coveted Game of the Year award. This year, the nominees for Game of the Year include Astrobot, let's go, Game of the Year, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, don't know what that's doing there, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor ReFantazio, which I hear is phenomenal.
It's perfect.
The much spoken about contender, Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Woo!
Now,
baby, the obvious
the front
winner of the obvious front runner, Shadow of the Erd Tree. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Elden Ring twice?
I mean,
once and then DLC.
I mean, here's my thing. I will never say that Elden Ring or Elden Ring content is not Game of the Year level. Okay? It is Game of the Year level content. Whether it's the main game, the expansions, what have you. However, to me, Shadow of the Erd Tree is not a game. It is an expansion. It's an expansion of Elden Ring, which is the game. I don't think you can put out Erd Tree on its own and call it a game because the backbone of it is Elden Ring.
I would make the same argument for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, though.
Really?
I'm in terms of like, it can't exist without that first one. So in terms of them both being sequels, Shadow of the Erd Tree is as long as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's a huge game. It's basically a sequel to Elden Ring. It's like a slightly trimmed down sequel, but I do understand the controversy here.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like the idea, I mean, it is DLC. And I think people have to come to terms with, and/or the Game Awards needs to explain what it considers for Game of the Year. If DLC counts, then that means all DLC
should count.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So and that probably should have been something stated on some website beforehand, so that this controversy didn't happen necessarily. But or they should have just not nominated it. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like. Do you think they could have? Do you think FromSoft could have gotten away calling this Elden Ring 2? Because I think that would have just skated over all of this, and they would have been nominated it no problem. Like, is it big enough to be a 2, or is it more like a? It's
more. I mean, look, it's more like it. You have to consider how big Elden Ring is, right? Like,
I know.
So Elden Ring 2, you would think, well, that would need to be bigger and better than Elden Ring 1, and Shadow of the Erdtree is smaller. You know, so it's more like a 1.5.
Okay.
You know, but the thing is like it took me 45 to 50 hours to get through Shadow of the Erdtree. Like it's a massive game. So I don't think they could have gotten away with calling it a sequel. It does work well as DLC. I wonder if they're even surprised they were nominated. I feel like
they are.
This.
They're like, dude, what? What are you? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not even working on this anymore. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I think this is also a pretty interesting reflection of how this year has been in games, which I would say it's been not that great of a year. If you're nominating DLC, that's a sign that this year, if you're nominating Balatro, no offense to Balatro, right? Like,
you might want to be. I was gonna say you might want to be careful because there are some legitimate Balatro addicts out there, from what I understand.
I haven't started it yet, but I assume I'm gonna get completely underwater.
I don't
want to
do it. I don't want to do it.
Everyone who's played it says it's amazing. I totally agree. Indie games don't usually show up in this, right? So like that's another thing that's kind of odd about this. Also, like you said, Black Myth Wukong is on this list.
Yeah,
which is that game. Have you played that game?
No, but I can tell by looking. No, I can tell. You know how sometimes you have that eye. You know what I mean? Like you and I, we've been playing games long enough. We've been in this thing long enough that you can look at a game and be like, that's a 7. That's a 6 or 7. You know what I mean? You can smell it on it.
Yeah, I mean, I have played it, and I would say, it's like a 7. See? It's about a 7. It's about a 7, 8. You know,
it's a good looking 7.
It's really good. It's really good. It's really good looking too. But it's like, man, like compared to last year, and I mean, like, we all know this thing ebbs and flows in cycles, but you know, this doesn't. Black Myth Wukong doesn't touch a game like Armored Core 6.
No, not even close.
Just like a random title from last year that wasn't even the best.
Right.
You know, so it's just hard because, but man, I don't know how strong of a chance it has, and I'm not. But Metaphor ReFantazio should win this.
I feel like you're the first one to say that. Well, the first one I know to say that.
Yeah,
but I feel like that's not that crazy.
I'm a huge fan, but like I've played every game on this list except for Balatro. And I think Metaphor ReFantazio is the game of the year.
And you know what? Honestly, if it won, I wouldn't be mad. Even
if it doesn't win, it'll be remembered longer than
just for
games,
being nominated. I'm still in Camp Astrobot right now.
Oh yeah,
that game
I wouldn't hate that.
That game is one of 2 games ever that have made me cry from happiness, and it was that. It was that, and it was Mario Odyssey. Those are the only 2 that I'm like,
oh wow,
yeah, tears of joy from those games. Like, just, man, art is awesome, and games are awesome, and being alive is awesome, and that's what those games made me feel. You know what I mean? And it's
100%.
Yeah. But Metaphor, I would 100% be fine if it took it home. I know it's a slim chance because not a lot of people play those, but it is literally the Persona team making this game. So you already know it's going to be top-notch content. Rebirth is the one that I feel like is the wild card.
Oh, in what way?
Well, I feel like the internet's done that weird, like turn a corner thing on it. You know what I mean? Like,
okay,
how the first one was like, everybody was like, oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. And then, after that, with the second one, everybody's like, oh, it's just this, it's the first one again, but it's bigger. You know how like they like to turn on this just because internet likes to hate things. But I've heard Rebirth is amazing. So I couldn't tell you one way or the other. I haven't had a chance to play. I loved Remake.
I that might be true about Rebirth. I have to be honest, I don't know what people think of that game. I mean, I don't think I've seen a lot of like people talking about it, but to me it makes sense because it's like it being on this list, just because it's like what else would you put on here?
Yeah,
like, literally like that. It was maybe one of the bigger things I think that came out that seemed to be at least got huge critical praise, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really liked Rebirth. That was my game of the year until I played Metaphor, and then that just took it because I can't, it's just the best.
I 100% believe you. I want to play that game so bad.
It's so good. You would love it, dude. You would love it.
I'm holding out.
Yeah.
Switch 2, I know it's coming. I know it's coming to Switch 2. I know it is.
Do you think Astrobot has a legit chance?
I want to say yes, because of the critical acclaim and because it is the outlets that are voting on it. So I think that it would be why it has a legitimate chance. And because it was one of the highest rated games of this year. I think it was maybe the second behind. Was it behind Elden Ring? Or maybe Metaphor? It was in the high 90s for sure. Like nobody had a bad thing to say about this game at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it would be such a strong front runner, and it was so different from most of the stuff that we got this year. A classic platformer that just was polished to a sheen, and it was just made by a team of veterans who really care about PlayStation and care about video games as a whole, and it's a nice love letter to that. So I can definitely see that. Great. Taking home the award. But quite honestly, I think it's probably going to be between Astrobot. If we're being real about it, Astrobot, Elden Ring, and Final Fantasy. One of those three is taking it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. It kind of, I think, honestly, and look, I love Elden Ring, but when you put it like that, it's like, I definitely want to see Astro or Final Fantasy take it over Elden Ring. I mean, I just, and Astro would be cool to reward that team that made it, because it really was that team, I think.
Yeah.
I think
Team Asobi is they are monsters over there.
I don't think Sony was making them do that.
No,
I think they took it upon themselves. Yeah.
But yeah, we just wanted to touch it real quick on that. And there are a host of other categories that are being nominated, but we would literally be here all night if we went through each category. So I would invite you to visit the GameSpot article and read for yourself and see if there's anything in the list that you might have missed this year, and go check it out. Maybe you still have time to play it before the Game Awards happen, so you can have a better understanding. Speaking of one of the Game of the Year nominees, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm going to move over to the next story here from Eurogamer. Basically saying that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth director says fans don't want DLC as much as they want Part 3. And in quotations, it says, that's why we decided not to focus resources on creating DLC at the moment. An interesting take. Let's.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
where is he getting this info?
honestly, he might be cooking. I'll expand on that in just a little bit. But the article starts. It says Final Fantasy Rebirth will not be getting any significant story-led DLC. That's according to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth director Naoki Hamaguchi, who told the Daily Star that whilst he's aware that the fan community would like an expansion like episode Intermission, the team's focus is instead on Part 3 in order to get it out as quickly as possible. We definitely do hear desire from the fans. The voices out there that want that kind of thing, Hamaguchi said in the interview. I understand it completely, but I think from my perspective, what fans really want to see the most is not necessarily DLC. They want to see the third part of the series as quickly as possible. So that's why we've decided not to focus the development resources on creating additional extra episodes for DLC at the moment. We really are putting all our efforts into getting the third game out as quickly as we can. So for the moment, that's where we're focusing our time. Final Fantasy, let's see here. He deliberately intended for Rebirth's ending to cause debate and keep players guessing until the trilogy's forthcoming conclusion. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth not getting DLC, honestly, I think is a good move. And I'll explain why, because Final Fantasy VII Part 1 came out, 2019, wasn't it?
2020.
2020.
During lockdown.
Okay. So 2020, and then we got Rebirth 3 years later, right? 2023. So
yeah,
if they were
24,
was it 20? It was this year? Yeah, I guess so. It's Game of the Year. So basically, it took them another 4 years to get this game out. Now, had they done another one, right, we would have been looking at 2028 for Part 3.
Yes, if what he's saying is that making DLC extends the amount of time it takes to get a Part 2 or Part 3, then yes, it would be 2028.
Right. I think Square's doing this for a multitude of reasons. I think the obvious one is that they don't want to have these teams sitting on payroll for multiple years. So they're trying to get this done as much as possible. I also think that they want to finish up the 7 trilogy because they're moving into another potential remake that's been leaked or that's been talked about, which I hear is 10 that they're talking about doing.
10 remake?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I can see it. Especially in
That's
the
wild,
engines.
yeah.
Are they
going to change all the voice actors?
I don't think so. Everybody's still alive, aren't they? All the original voice actors?
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, are they going to redo the script?
I would imagine. I don't think they're going to do a remake in the style of 7 where they change the timeline. I think this is probably going to be more of like a 1-to-1 type of deal.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying, like, are they going to build it from the ground up remake?
Oh yeah, that's what the word is.
Yeah. So then it needs an entirely new script and it needs an entirely new everything.
Right.
So
because by the time
then you would get different voice actors. You probably wouldn't get the same people.
I mean, unless they can still do it. I would bring the originals back if they can still do it, and if they could still do it well. But if you think about it, right, like by the time they're gonna get around to this, it will have been about 25 years since 10 came out.
Yeah.
So
wild.
Yeah. At least 25 years.
That's just so interesting because I think, if I'm looking at something I want to remake, I would be going older. Mm-hmm. And more, or if not the same, beloved. So I would, if I was Square, I would look at Final Fantasy VI. Or
I was just thinking 6. But also, I think for 6 and Chrono Trigger, though, I think those will work better as HD 2D.
Yeah, I mean that very well might be their plan. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think because 10 is completely voice acted. That's such a weird idea to me that they're gonna like remake something that's Yeah, like what was that Until Dawn remake that happened? You
Was
know
it
what I
a
mean? Like
remake?
they just felt,
Or did they just up-res it? I
Was
feel like
it?
they just
I don't
up-resed
know.
it.
I actually don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, okay, cool. Well, that is. I think if you're giving me the option between, do I get the third installment sooner? If I skip DLC, I would pick skip DLC. I would say yes. Go right to the third one.
Me too. It was nice. It was nice having that intermission. You know what I mean, in the middle, just to bring that in. But I think you can just whatever you were going to put in the DLC here, just mush it into the third part and have it just be one big package.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's sounds smart, and it does sound like what people I think would want. I think it's funny to frame it that way though, because I think what people really want is they want it to come out sooner and there to be DLC.
Right.
You know what I think they want it all. They want like, why don't you just do it all?
Right. I was gonna say, can't you guys just do that? Like, what do you mean? Like,
see, I don't.
You need rest. You need to not have time off. What is that? No, get back in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like. But we don't know anything about how these games are made, right? Like we don't know. Like,
no,
I didn't consider that the DLC for 7 remake was such a tug on their resources, because that seems like, why would you do that? You know, because it's like, you know, just clearly move on to the next game and like get it out.
Right.
But I guess everything has DLC these days for the most part. So
yeah, and I think Rebirth was even bigger than remake, so I'm pretty sure like Square is looking at these numbers and they're like, yo,
huge,
not as many people bought Rebirth as we thought we were gonna buy it, so maybe we should just go ahead and get this going so we can get that trilogy done, get it out, and move on to the next thing. But hopefully that this means that we get like a 2026 launch. That would be ideal, because then you can get it
great.
You can get it right at the tail end of PS5, and then have PS6 to be a clean slate for whatever the next big Square project is going to be. So hopefully that's what we get as far as the timeline.
I don't want to think about PS6 at all.
You better start. Because it's coming.
I am like, oh gosh, it feels way too soon.
Well, we barely got anything out of 5 yet, and we're what, 4 years in?
That's what I'm saying. I know, it's horrible. This is the worst generation.
This is the worst PlayStation by far. This is the worst PlayStation generation by a country mile. And I don't know how, if you really care about PlayStation, I don't know how you can look me in the face and rebuttal that. But speaking of PlayStation, moving on, this is our last story here. This is one that I saw, and let me tell you, I popped off big time, because this is what I've been preaching for Sony to do this entire time, instead of wasting their time on virtual reality again. But anyway, this article over from Bloomberg states that Sony is working on a handheld console for PS5 games to rival the Switch. And it's by Takashi Mochizuki and Debbie Wu. And the article goes as follows. It says, Sony Group Corp is in the early stages of developing a portable console that would play its PlayStation 5 games on the move. The product is aimed at expanding Sony's reach and contending with Nintendo for the portable gaming market, according to people familiar with its development. It would also counter any potential mobile hardware from Xbox maker Microsoft, which is working on prototypes in the category as well. Sony's portable device is likely years away from launch, and the company could still decide against bringing it to market. Don't do that. Bring it out, please. The people said,
please,
asking not to be named, discussing private plans. The idea builds on the PlayStation Portal, an 8-inch handheld device Sony released in 2023 that allows users to play PS5 games by streaming them over the internet. Tokyo-based Sony initially had intended for it to function as a standalone device like Valve's Steam Deck, people said. Building a mobile device that's capable of directly playing PS5 games would potentially make Sony's software more accessible and appealing to a wider audience. The company has taken several steps in recent times in that direction, including making a bigger push into mobile and PC games, as well as live service titles. A Sony spokeswoman declined to comment on the matter. Jeremy, I can't tell you how many months/years I was saying that Sony should have just worked on a new portable system at this point. I said way back, maybe 2019, that the second that Sony saw that the Switch was successful is when they should have said, oh, people still want this and we can do this and we've done this and we've done this very well in the past. So there's no reason why we can't do it again. And I think that they got gun shy and decided to try to pivot and see if there's something else that they could only do in their niche. And that's how we got PlayStation VR. Which the first one was good. It was fun, but you know, it was limited, right? But I feel like had they, you know, knuckled up and done that push to bring out this portable hardware, we'd have a much more interesting situation with, I feel like that would have spurred Nintendo to bring out whatever this new hardware is way faster than they're doing now, because they would have had to keep up. They would have gotten steamrolled. But yeah, no, I've always said that I wish that they would have taken the resources that they use for PSVR and put it into essentially what is, I even said, you know what, call it PSP2, because I'm dead serious about it, because everybody knows, well, most people know what PSP is, right? They know PSP is PlayStation Portable. It's not PlayStation Portal. I don't want to hear that.
Are people saying that?
Yes, people are trying to use the PSP.
Is actually PlayStation.
That is not what that acronym is. But you already have that built-in branding with the acronym. So just use it and say that this is the new PlayStation Portable. And I'm glad that they're finally, you know, acknowledging that this is something that we need to look into, and hopefully it does come to market. Fingers crossed, because I will be there day one to buy one if it does. But yeah, no, this news had me stoked. I don't know if you were able to find this out before, but how you feeling?
So the PlayStation Portal, let's talk about that for a second, because that's a really interesting piece of technology that I don't quite understand. But it used to be that you could only stream your PS5 games to it if you were on the same Wi-Fi.
Right.
But then they updated the thing like on the software level, and it became a device that you could stream your PS5 library from across the world.
Yeah. I'm looking at one now.
You can do it. Yeah. So that is really weird to me, that like that functionality got that much, like progressed that much within the same device. Because at one point I had no interest in a PlayStation Portal.
Zero.
But once that update hit, it changed my, you know,
it
changed my idea.
I want one now.
I do. Yeah, right. Exactly. So that is to say how much I want a portable PlayStation console again. So much so that I almost bought a Portal for no reason, like because it doesn't. It's not really what we want, right? Like it's not we want like a Vita. We want like the next evolution of the PSP and the Vita. I think the reason why they've stayed so far away from handhelds is because of the Vita, right? Like
it burned them pretty bad
because of how bad that. It flopped so bad, and they were so stupid about how they rolled that thing out, and like the pricing on it,
memory cards.
Yeah, it was a huge flop for them, and so I think it kept them well away from trying to compete in the portable space. But I think the Switch and the Steam Deck to some extent too did this weird thing in the market where they didn't just make it where like people like mobile gaming. People had to do mobile gaming. Like it became a thing that you just have to have because you're traveling, and a lot of people won't play a game if it's not mobile and on the go.
Ding ding ding, right here.
Yeah. So that means that for the majority of these people's lives, they're not playing Xbox home console. They're not playing PlayStation home console. So I think they're having to respond to this. And I think it's a good thing because, man, the PSP and the PS Vita are stone cold killers.
Just marvelous hardware all the way through. Yeah, I cannot sing the praises, especially not only Vita, but like of PSP. I cannot sing the praises of that handheld enough. It is honestly, I remember it looking at it like it was alien technology back in 2005, just because of what it could do and the fact that it read those little discs and all that. It really honestly felt like something that was out of the future. And I know that this is the same company that made that before, and I know that they can do it again. And I know they have the resources and they have the reach for talent, and they have the eye and they have the know-how with technology to be able to strike, to have lightning strike again. And they just need to really hunker down and lock in. And I think that they can do it. So
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Okay. It's about portable consoles versus home consoles.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about it being a portable PlayStation 5 and not its own thing? Because I feel like part of the charm of the PSP and charm of the PS Vita is that they're completely different libraries from what the home console was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But now that the Switch is just both, it's I sometimes miss the days of home console and then there's a 3DS.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think honestly it's inevitable, right? There's no way you weren't gonna have to let this thing play current gen or I guess by the time it comes out, last gen level games. But I do think that there will be some way that it will have its own library, just because by the time this thing actually does come out, we probably will be in PS6 territory, and this thing is not playing PS6 games unless they are way scaled down.
Sure. Yeah.
So in that regard, it might end up having titles that are developed only for it. And also you would need a hook, because if the whole thing is just playing PS5 games, why wouldn't I just buy a Portal? I mean, you can have it native, but if Portal's doing the same job, and like it might barely be a little bit less noticeable because I actually have it on device versus streaming, you have to have a reason for me to want to get the actual unit. Or
I wonder if that's how they're gonna roll this out. Is they're gonna make it a part of the Portal line, and this will just basically be a more expensive Portal.
That might be the best way to do it then. If it's only gonna play like PS5 games and not have its own library, I would probably, honestly, that's pretty smart. I would frame it that way, of like, this is the offline, or this is the new Portal, so you can play the games streaming, or you can download them to the Portal itself, maybe like a Portal 2.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe that might be what they call it, or somewhere in that vein, and I wouldn't be mad about that.
Yeah, I mean, that is what I want. I mean, that is something I want, and then it could be a thing where, it's kind of your choice, like how you do it the Switch. Like some games I want to play on a big TV, like a Zelda, but then some games I want to play handheld, like smaller games.
Right. Do you think it's going to be its own thing, or do you think it's going to have a dock? Or do you think they're going to want you to buy a straight up PS5?
Oh, interesting.
Like if you want to play it on the TV, you're going to buy a PS5. But you buy one game, and like how cross-buy used to be, you buy one game and you get it on big PS5 and you get it on the handheld too.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Do I think there'll be a dock? If it's its own console, it will probably come with a dock. Yeah. I would think. Yeah. Especially if it's its own console where you could like buy games and then have your account and like store them locally. You know? I mean, then I think you should have a dock, because not everyone who's going to buy this is going to own a PS5
at the same time. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe they'll make it mandatory. You have to own a PS5 to own this. That would.
And I wouldn't put it past Sony
smart.
because they've made a lot of bonehead decisions like that too before.
I know.
So
that wouldn't be smart. But.
Let's just hope they figure this out and it comes to market one day, and then we can look back and be like, Jeremy, remember when this was just a rumor? You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh man, it would be great.
Yeah.
It would be great to get another Sony handheld.
There's a timeline out there where it happens. Let's hope it's ours.
Yeah.
And that'll do it for our news section of the podcast. And from here, we're moving on to our Patreon ad. Alrighty. This is the part of the show where we go into our Patreon ad where we tell you all the goodies and perks and whatnot that you get from being a Patreon subscriber. From being a Patreon subscriber, you get early access to all of our Patreon exclusive shows, as well as early access to the podcast itself. Normally, it comes out a certain day of the week, every week for regular feeds, but you get it a few days early every single time. Also, you get access to our exclusive shows like Super Gamer Book Club, Super Later Boys, and Super Dungeon Boys, which is our D&D campaign that we did a year or so back, and even more. You get all those, and you only have to pay $1 a month just to get access to all of that. It's an absolute steal. There's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of content for you to go through. And we have covered like the gamut of stuff that anybody who, let's just say, has some good taste would want to hop into.
Yeah, baby.
You can also support us over on Twitch with a free sub. If you have Prime, you have access to Prime Gaming, which means that through Amazon, you can give us a free Prime sub. That's right. Take Jeff Bezos's money from him. He does not need it. He builds rockets to space for fun. I think he'll be okay. So we appreciate that. If you head over to twitch.tv/Super Gamer Boys, the Super Gamer Boys, and just give us that free sub. It helps out very much with our support and allows us to keep on keeping on what we're doing here. Lastly, you can also support us by getting our merch over at sgbstore.com. Right now, we are running an extended run on our Summer Gamer Boys merch, which honestly was a pretty big hit. We got a lot of good feedback on that line and more purchases than we expected it to do. So we're keeping that up for just a little bit longer. And you should definitely go take a look because I feel like that's some of our best work. And also we got everything over there just in our regular merch line. We got mugs, towels, shirts, hoodies, accessories, stickers, the whole nine. There's something there for everybody. And it might be a good little, conversation starter to let them know or to let a friend know or somebody that you know that would like our podcast. Maybe you hand them a sticker and be like, hey, there's this podcast I listen to. It actually rips. And here's a sticker from it, here's a sticker for when you become a fan and you're gonna be like, man, I wish I had some merch. Look at that, you already do. You know what I mean?
I'm always collecting merch from stuff I'm gonna be a fan of later.
It's preemptive advertising. That's what we'll call it.
Yeah. When you're learning, you see a trailer for like a game coming out, and you're like, I just know I'm gonna be a fan of that. I know I need to start already buying merch.
Yeah.
I know. I just, yeah.
So yeah, that is our offerings for our Patreon and as well as our other services that we offer. We hope that you go and check them out and maybe purchase a thing here or there or tell a friend about it because we always could use more and more support and we appreciate you in any way that you do so. All right, with that, let's get back to the show. Okay, Jeremy, we are at the section of the show, the penultimate section of the show that we like to call What You're Playing, where we basically ask each other throughout the last week, what have you been into as far as games? Have you been, just kind of poking away at anything, or have you been knee deep in something, or, anything basically that you want to talk about game wise that you've been playing? So, good sir, this past week, what you playing?
Well, I guess this last week, if I'm being completely honest, I've been playing Death Stranding, which was now I can't remember. Did you beat this game?
Oh yeah, when it came out,
Adrian. Okay, great. So you
Gen 1.
You know about it. Yeah, you know all about this game. So we're doing it for our little games club Patreon show over at our little network, and as a games club, and we're kind of we're doing it chapter by chapter, going through the game and talking about it. And I'm basically towards the end, getting to we're in the very last couple of chapters of the game, and like that game is. Well, what I found so interesting about it is that it made me feel like such a wide range of emotions about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was wrestling with it not only mechanically in my hands, but I was also wrestling with whether or not I liked certain aspects of it throughout the entire game. Like it's a game that really polarizes you. It puts you in a corner and it makes you make choices. Like, hey, do you like this or not? It really sticks it to you. It's because the game has such tricky mechanics and such a weird, like design philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't a traditional like third-person action game by any stretch. So you're like, I don't know. It's like an odd game to sort of reckon with, and I think that's something I've really appreciated about it. Is like, playing something that is very divisive and that has you sort of asking these bigger questions of yourself internally throughout. Obviously, the narrative makes you do a lot of that, but like just the gameplay makes you do that too. You're just like, do I like the driving in this game? And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, no, I hate the driving in this game. And then sometimes I'm like, no, it's pretty good. It's pretty okay. Actually, it functions, So yeah, it's a weird one, but yeah, that's basically what I've been playing, and of course the Pokemon trading card game. Pocket.
Oh man,
Adrian had
a game.
He had to suffer hearing us talk like in depth about it on the last
honestly,
episode of my show.
You made me want to like get deeper in it. Like I was still at the surface level, and dude.
Get in, the water's fine, buddy. It is good on this side of the pool. The Pokemon Trading Card Pocket is just an absolute blast. I've been just having and it's just this weird thing where I'll be at work, and I'll be like sending an email, and I'm like, I could do a match really quick.
I could open a pack real quick. Yeah,
yeah, I could open a pack real quick, just see what I got. It gives you that dopamine hit of opening real packs, but you don't have to pay for them and then store them.
You just store them on your phone.
Forever. They're on your phone until the servers go down.
You don't think there'll be some way to like download all your cards forever?
Oof, I don't know. That would be like a PDF of what I that
you have to guard with your life and hope that none of your hard drives ever fail.
Yeah. Wow. What about you, man? What have you been up to?
Oh, dude. Okay. So, I would say before yesterday, and I mentioned it on Video Games, a comedy show when I was on. I have been pretty knee deep in the Radiant Historia game, which is for the uninitiated. It's a Atlas JRPG that was originally on DS and then got a basically DX version. Re-release on 3DS with like upgraded visuals, new content, and I believe it's fully voice acted in the 3DS version. I don't know if it was in the original, but that game is it's so good. It's got a unique battle system. I know a grid battle system is not necessarily like it's the first of its kind, but like the way that they implement it is really well done. The voice acting is really it's pretty good. It's for a 3DS game. I appreciate the fact that they wanted to do that at all, because there's very few games that are actually voiced on 3DS. So, you know, hats off to Atlas for making that choice. I said this too on the show. I said it feels like a perfect portable RPG. And I feel like if you like RPGs, you know exactly what I mean by that. Like just the aesthetic of it, the scope of it, the systems. Like it feels like you can close the system and come right back to it, and you know what I mean, like be right back. Like there's no bad place to pause the game, because it feels like you can always just pop right back in no matter what you're doing. And
you're making me want to play this so bad.
It's so fun, dude.
You're selling it so well.
I dig the visuals. It's a mix of not backgrounds. The worlds are 3D, and the characters are sprites, which was an interesting choice, but I dig it. Only negative for me, and I get it because it's a later 3DS game, is it's not in 3D. That's the one big like drawback. I feel like if this was in, I honestly, I don't think that this game, looking at it, while it does look good, it doesn't use enough resources to be like, oh, they already used all the processing power, they didn't have any left for 3D. This game could have been in 3D, but I think maybe they had to use the development cost elsewhere, which is probably why we got voice acting. Because if it would have had to be in 3D,
what would you have rather had? What would you rather have, voice acting or 3D?
I would say I would reduce voice acting to get 3D. Maybe like, you know, meaningful cutscenes I would want voice acted, and then everything else could be text. But at this point,
I like that balance.
Yeah. But at this point, everything is, and it's not a negative. I'm just saying everything is voice acted by the main characters in the game. Like any line that they say is fully recorded, and I like I said, I dig the dedication to that bit.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I've been playing. And then up until yesterday, which I started, and I'm probably gonna tentatively put it on the back burner just so I can finish Radiant Historia. I picked up Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake.
Oh man.
Good buddy. Let me tell you, this game might be everything that I wanted from Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. I have yet to run into something that has not been improved in some way, smoothed out in some way, or expanded upon in some way, in a positive. It's gone through with a fine-tooth, loving comb, and basically made this game the vision that we had of it in the original, and brought it up to modern standard at the same time. I'm only, and this is me talking like I'm still at the like I'm only a couple hours in at this point.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, because I'm about like 7 hours in. I did also put it down to finish some other stuff, but yeah, man.
And that's the only reason that I'm not going more forward in it, is because I am neck deep. Like the Radiant Historia has its hooks in me real bad, and I don't want to lose it, because I want to see where this story goes, and I want to just fully knock it out before I commit to another. I think balancing two 100%. RPGs is difficult. I think you should have maybe order. One. Right.
That's a tall order.
It's a tall order. So I 1000% intend to get back to this as soon as I finish Radiant Historia. But what I've played of it so far, game is gorgeous. Did not know there was voice acting. That was a positive surprise for me. I love that.
Yeah. Who did you roll as like your first party members? Can you share that? Do you remember do you remember like, because I don't think it's the same each time, right? Isn't it randomized?
No, I think it's randomized.
Oh, is it yeah.
I'm trying to think. I had to pull up my file.
Yeah, no, it's no big deal. Yeah, I was just curious about that, because it does seem like they just give you three random people.
Are you rolling any clowns just to be funny?
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to, like, because there's personalities in the game, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, there's characters that are like quite literally like jokesters or jokers. Like they're clowns. They're terrible stat wise.
They look like clowns. They look like clowns,
and they can't fight.
Oh wow, no, I haven't rolled any of them.
Okay.
I also haven't lost a party member yet. I haven't no one's died. So
look at this guy. He knows his way around the battle, huh?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So I'm like, and they're all upgrading in different ways. Mm-hmm. Getting different. It's like really interesting.
Yeah, I had to pull up my file to tell you exactly what my party is at this point. Because I literally just got them a little bit ago because I've just been running around town being like, oh my God, this is HD 2D. Oh my God, look how good this looks. Yeah. But I will send me
take a photo when you're playing it next time and send it over to me.
Absolutely. So those are the two big things that I have been playing this week. And it sounds like we have both got our work cut out for us as far as getting back into those.
Oh man.
Yeah, dude. I'm stoked. Like we're actually playing things because a lot of times life gets a little in the way and you kind of like have to put, games on the back burner, but not this week.
Yes. I mean, there's I've been dogging on this year a lot, but there is a lot of good stuff that has come out, and
it's just under the AAA level.
Yeah, I feel like I'm surrounded by a bunch of options right now that are all great. Like, I'm still playing through Echoes of Wisdom, and I am loving my time with that.
Another one I've got to get
obviously.
Another one I've got to get to.
Yeah. And I'm still, I think I talked about this on Video Games and Comedy Show a little bit, but like I am still interested in this Brothership game. Like it's not bad. It's like started out pretty good.
Another one I got to
there's a lot of good stuff.
Get to later.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And of course, we both have to finish Black Myth Wukong.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't tell you. I'm like 40 hours into it. I'm at the tail end. Maybe if it goes on like a deep discount, maybe I'll give it a shot.
Why not? Maybe
like $20
or like PS Plus. That would be a great PS Plus game.
It would if it makes its way. I will give it a fair shake if it ever comes to PS Plus.
Yeah.
And with that, we have actually come to the end of this episode. I want to thank you, the listeners, for hanging out with us for this episode, and I appreciate you hanging out with me while I drive the show. I think I did okay, but I'm sure I'll hear from Garrett either way. It's his fault. He should have been here. Shouldn't have let the inmates run the asylum. But you know what? We got from start to finish, and I'm proud of that.
You did great, man. You're a great host. You don't even need Garrett, I think.
All right, that's how the Beatles broke up.
You hear me, Garrett? Scram!
Yeah, so
I miss you, and I'll be reaching out to you soon.
But yeah, of course, thank you for everybody who watches and supports. But I would not have been able to do this episode without Jeremy. Sir, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a fantastic guest on our podcast. We appreciated you having you on. You're welcome back anytime. Is there anything that you'd like to plug to our good audience here?
Oh man, thanks so much for having me. It was a blast. It's always a blast. I love this show. Yeah, you can come listen to my show, Video Games, a Comedy Show. How many times can I say show in a row? Video Games, a Comedy Show. Anywhere podcasts can be found. Yeah, I host that, and it's just a bunch of comedians get on and talk about video games. Sometimes Adrian's on, sometimes Garrett Morlang is on as well. And that's really it for me.
Awesome. And just again, thank you guys for listening, watching, telling a friend. And don't forget to take a look at our Patreon. Again, it's only $1 to get in, and you get access to all the good stuff that we've done and all the good stuff that we will continue to do with your support. Don't forget to stop by SGB store, grab some merch, and review us on podcast apps. That actually really helps when we get reviews. It kind of bumps us up closer to the top of the list where more people will see us. And also subscribe to us on YouTube. We are like maybe around 20 subscribers away from 500. And that's a huge goal that we were trying to hit before this year closes out. And I still think we can do it with a little bit of a push. So if you know somebody who you think might like our stuff, send us their way. And you never know, we might actually hit it. Shout out to Jack Sriracha, Yate, and DJ Trooz for allowing us to use their music on our show. You can find them on Spotify, Apple Music, and SoundCloud. And you can find me on the internet at Homeboy. That's HOLMBOI. Anywhere that somebody might have a gaming account or a social media account. Jeremy, where can the good people find you?
On Twitter at Ocarina of Crime. At Ocarina of Crime on Twitter.
And that'll do it for us. Until next time, we are the Super Gamer Boys, and we'll catch you on the flippity flop. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming by, man. I really appreciate it.